Hey, there's a lot of talented wide receivers out there in the upcoming NFL draft. But who scores some of the highest scores in the prospect success indicator? Let's dive into it and find out. What is going on, Headliner Nation? Welcome back. Next episode, Fantasy Headliners, joined once again by Mr. Miguel Chapton. Miguel, how are we doing today?
We're doing great, man. How are you?
Man,
Today is PSI day, man.
That's right. Today is we're gonna put this on the calendar. We may send something to somebody of some importance and see if we can get this added as a national holiday. Because yes, this is the release of PSI. If you didn't catch an earlier episode of me and Miguel talking about what PSI is, I'm gonna link it down in the description so you can go back and check it out. But PSI is something that Miguel has created. I'm going to let him kind of do a brief description here in a second, but it definitely kind of helps us pinpoint some potential breakout wide receivers. Miguel, and can you just kind of give a quick explanation of how you break down PSI?
Yeah, the model overall has helped to design. It's designed to narrow the draft field. So we get on average somewhere between 40 to 60 wide receivers in every class every year. How do we cut that down and increase our odds of hitting? And we do that by kind of comparing every incoming prospect's profile to that of the top 24 wide receivers of past in the NFL and seeing how closely they relate to that profile. And what we've noticed is that the closer that it relates to the profile, the higher the success score is. Obviously, there's other things that come into account down the line that we'll have to account for, like draft capital and landing spots, but we at least are able to narrow the field down in half, and then from there we can pick kind of our horses in the race to bet on from within that field.
Yeah, absolutely. Great way to explain it. And we have a few names. We're going to get into them here. Some of the names that you're used to seeing on a lot of draft boards. And we're kind of going to break down where they fell in this model and just kind of give you a little bit of an outlook that way. Before we get into some of these names, though, if you're new here, make sure you hit that like button, subscribe button. We greatly appreciate it. And then throw a comment down below. As you're watching, if you have a question, ask it. One of us will get back to you. We answer it. We're one of the most interactive channels on YouTube. We really want that interaction between you guys. So keep that in mind as you're watching. Feel free to comment below. First person we're going to get into, Miguel, is Hakeem Butler out of Iowa State. He's definitely somebody who a lot of people out there love Hakeem Butler, and they may be falling in love with just a few highlight reels, but where does he fall in your model?
Yeah, so the first thing we have to understand about the model is that it's really broken up into two groups, right? So we have the bottom 50 percentile group and then the top 50 percentile group. And so as you go up the top 50 percentile group, the hit rate grows larger and larger. But you first have to at least meet that threshold. And Hakeem Butler comes in just above the 50th percentile group with a score of 4.39 in PSI. I comped him to a slightly better Kenny Golladay. And that's exactly who I think he's going to be. A lot of consensus rankings have him as a top number one receiver. I've been seeing a lot of that lately. I think people really fell in love with his measurables at the combine. And overall, his profile has just blown up since. But he's still just an average receiver. It took him until age 21 to break out. That's a huge piece of the model. You have to be able to break out before then. Of all the top 24 wide receivers since 2010, only 6 have broken out at age 21 or greater, and only 2 have gone on to repeat. So that's a really small sample size of age 21 guys to have done it. It doesn't bode well for him. I still love Hakeem Butler. I mean, I watch his highlight reels, his film, and it looks fantastic. I've liked Hakeem Butler for the last about 2 years. But the model doesn't love him as much. It doesn't love him at an elite level, at least, right? It doesn't say that he's the next Odell Beckham Jr. or Mike Evans or Kelvin Johnson. It has him more with Kenny Golladay, someone who will probably give us a few good seasons, but isn't going to be that elite level talent that we're going to be talking about down the line, 7-8 years from now, like we do about Julio Jones.
Yeah, he may be one of those guys that's really dependent on the landing spot. He's going to have to end up in a high-powered passing offense to have a chance here in the next year or so, kind of where I see that.
Yep.
Next up, we got one of the longest names we're going to see on the back of a jersey this season, J.J. Arcega, Whiteside, wide receiver out of Stanford. And a lot of people started to pay attention to him after his pro day.
Yeah, J.J. Arcega Whiteside did very well. He came in. He's got a great production profile, although it is more heavily weighted in touchdowns than it is in yards, which is a bit of a concern. But he does score well. He came in right in at the 60th percentile mark. I comped him to Mike Williams from the 2010 draft class, who was a 4th-round pick. J.J. Arcega-Whiteside is looking to probably be maybe a 2nd, 3rd-round pick, is where a lot of people have had him most of the offseason. He did definitely increase his draft value at his pro day by running a sub 4.5 40. And overall, he looks to be the part of one of the better wide receivers in this class. I like him. I think he's very underrated. I think a lot of that had to do with the fact that he didn't participate at the combine. So, out of sight, out of mind is basically what happened to him for the last, couple months. But now that he had his pro day, I think people are going to really like him. He did not participate in the agility drills or the bench press. But had he done that, he would have scored as the number 5 wide receiver in this class. But still just outside the top 90th percentile. So his score would have been even better than it is today had he participated in those drills and had he succeeded in them. Unfortunately, we'll never know, but the answer probably lies somewhere in the middle there.
Yeah, he's definitely somebody. And I think the Mike Williams comp is pretty close. I remember we did a show, it was a month or two ago. I think it was pre-combine even, and we talked about him, and I said I kind of see him as like a poor man's Mike Evans. And now kind of getting to see a little bit more of him. Yeah, I think Mike Williams may be a little bit better, but he's that big-bodied wide receiver that could be a red zone threat for somebody in the NFL. The next name on the list may be a name that not a lot of people are familiar with. I've heard the name because I live in North Carolina, so therefore he went to Wake Forest, so I've heard of him before, but it's Greg Dortch.
Yeah, Greg Dortch is a hyper-productive college producer from the moment he stepped on the field. The big thing with Greg Dortch is that he's not big. He checked in at 5'7", weighed less than 180 pounds, I believe. So he doesn't check the physical profile that you're looking for in a top 24 receiver, but he checks every other box. Again, he didn't participate in every drill at the combine or at his pro day, but if we were to assume that he did and that they would have succeeded in those drills, he would have checked in as the number 4 wide receiver in this class. But as I always say, the truth is probably somewhere in the middle. He probably would have succeeded in a couple of them, maybe not in another. We just don't know. But Dortch is just – I personally don't like short, light receivers. That's not something that I buy into as a fantasy owner. I like my bigger wide receivers. That's just my bias. But I wouldn't be surprised if he sees some success. But there was a lot of hype for him early in the offseason. People had him ranked super high, really thought he was going to be this big producer, and he still can be. I mean, he's definitely in the range of outcomes for success. But I just don't see him being an elite wide receiver in the NFL. I think he's going to be a nice complimentary guy. His player comp comes as someone as Ace Sanders from the 2013 class, who was a 4th-round pick. I've seen a lot of actual mock drafts that have Greg Dortch kind of in the mid to late rounds now. So that seems to be where the NFL values him. So for those reasons, Greg Dortch is a good player, but not going to be that elite player that many kind of thought early on in the offseason.
Yeah, I think one thing he's going to battle with is when he gets drafted, wherever that may be, he's going to show up to camp somewhere, and it's going to look like somebody brought their kid to work.
Yeah, literally.
That's kind of what it's going to be like. Oh, that guy's cute.
I want to see him next to the next guy.
Exactly, the next guy.
I just want to see stand. It would be like twins with Arnold Schwarzenegger and Danny DeVito.
Absolutely, and you led into it perfectly because the next guy on the list here is somebody who is talked about in every mock draft, and it's earlier than possibly should be, but it's DK Metcalf. Just because he looks like a superhero doesn't mean that he's going to be a superhero on the field. Where does he fall on PSI?
He came in with a score of 4.99, so he's right there in the 60th percentile range. His player comp to me is Josh Gordon. So my player comps are always just based on height, weight, speed, and overall college production, and seeing kind of who shakes out of that. Josh Gordon is a dead-on comp for him. And I think this really makes sense because this is how I've always viewed DK Metcalf from the beginning. Do I think he can find success in the NFL? Yes. Do I think he's going to be an elite level producer for a very long time? No. Do I kind of call him a shooting star. I think he'll shine bright for a little bit and then kind of fade away, very much like Josh Gordon, just for very different reasons. So that's kind of where I see DK Metcalf going. I'm happy to take a shot on him. I think I had this conversation with someone on Twitter yesterday. They were asking me where I would value DK Metcalf. I've got about 6 players, depending on your league style, whether it's single QB or 2 QB, about ahead of him. So 1.6, 1.7 range is where I'm willing to take a shot, but I'm not expecting him to be a a 10-year guy, a future Hall of Famer in the NFL.
Yeah, no, he's going to be somebody who's going to have great games. He's going to put up big numbers in a couple weeks of the season, and then you're not going to hear a whole lot with it.
People are going to get really excited when he does great things in the NFL because he will have phenomenal plays in the NFL. It'll just be the consistency factor with him.
Yep, absolutely. All right, next up on the list, another guy here out of North Carolina, actually North Carolina State, and it's going to be Kelvin Harmon, somebody who, in my opinion, at the end of the season, his stock has started to slowly decline from what you're hearing, but it looks like he could have been okay here on PSI.
Yeah, he's okay. He's not my favorite, even though he falls in the range of success. Like I said, you got to end up picking and narrowing this field down, and he sits outside of my top 5 guys. I player comped him to an old name, Jaron Kreiner from the 2012 class, a 5th round pick. He's entering the NFL at age 22. He broke out at just before the age of 21. Those are very average numbers. They're good. There's nothing wrong with it. There's just nothing elite about it. He showcased at the combine that he's not fast for the 4.6 40, that he wasn't explosive, and that he wasn't agile. So Harmon's athletic traits tend to lean very closely to Laquan Treadwell, which isn't someone that I loved, and that's just kind of another reason why I'm not big on Harmon personally. And his player comp with Jaron Kreiner is also someone who didn't really pan out in the NFL. I think he's going to struggle to find success. I don't really know what role he has. I don't think he's playing on the outside, and he's going to have to find success as a slot receiver. So he's got a very low ceiling for me. And when you're looking at the rookie draft ADP, Kelvin Harmon is up there, and I'd rather take JJ Arcega Whiteside, who's still going behind him in most rookie mocks. So why take Kelvin Harmon?
Yeah, exactly. And I want to know if anybody out there even knows who Jaron Kreiner is, and if you do, put it down in the comment section down below, because that'd be impressive. Next guy on the list, though, I'm very excited about. I mean, I would imagine that he should be the #1 rated wide receiver, not so much PSI wise, but on draft boards. And we're talking about Nikhil Harry out of Arizona State.
Yeah, and Nikhil Harry comes in with just shy of a perfect score at 6.87. I player comped him to Des Bryant, who was a 2010 first-round pick. He hit everything. You want college production? He nailed it. You want breakout age? He had that. He's the only Power 5 guy to have an 18-year-old breakout age. And he was an above-average athlete. Everyone assumed that he was this poor athlete going into the combine. And lo and behold, he proved that he wasn't. Most highly productive wide receivers who break out at age 18 in college aren't poor athletes. Shocker. So for those reasons, yeah, I'm all in on Harry. I think he's the safest pick in this draft. Do I love him as much as DJ Moore last year? I don't know. I'm liking him a bit more. It's all going to be very landing spot dependent for him. But we'll see where it all comes in. I do love Harry, and I think of all the guys, he's definitely the deserving wide receiver and player to go 1-1 in your rookie mocks or in your rookie drafts.
Yeah, and I think we've seen a lot through the pro days and stuff here lately too. He's got great hands. Like Des Bryant's a great comp, production wise, but I think a lot of things with Des is he got criticized a lot for drops. I don't see that so much with Nikhil Harry. He seems like somebody who has the Des Bryant game with better hands.
He's got the Des Bryant physical athletic profile, but with Odell Beckham hands.
Yeah, the dude has crazy hands. It's amazing to watch.
It's kind of hard not to love that.
Exactly. All right, next up here on the list, maybe another guy, if you hadn't watched our first show, you're not familiar with, but you should probably be familiar with it. And we're going to talk about Ashton Doolin out of the mega powerhouse Malone University.
Yeah, so Ashton Doolin was the only one to score a perfect score in this year's model, which is both great and a little concerning for the class as a whole. But I player comped him to Justin Watson, who was last year's 2017 5th-round pick and who also scored a perfect score in PSI. Ashton Doolin also had an 18-year-old breakout age. He had a dominator rating of 61%. He was super athletic. Actually, all his athletic measurables came in almost identical to that of like Chris Godwin and Justin Watson. So his only knock is that he went to Malone. I mean, that's it. But like we said with small school guys before in the previous episode, when you're looking at small school guys and you're looking at dominator rating, the smaller the school, the bigger the dominator rating we need to see. We normally have that threshold set at about 30%. But with a small school guy, you want to see him at least in the 40s, if not 50s or greater. He's coming in at 61%. So that completely checks that box for me. Someone like Keelan Doss, who's I would say is also a small school guy from UC Davis, is only checking at 30% in comparison. So that's someone who I'm not as high on for that reason. But yeah, I mean, love Ashton Doolin. Think he's fantastic. He's the sleeper in this class and someone you could really get great value for. I think he's coming up more in mocks now. I've seen him going in the second round now, so I don't think he's quite the sleeper that he used to be. But I'm guessing in most home leagues, he'll still probably go in the third round.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, we've gone through here. We've hit on, 7 guys here. So this is not the full list. And I kind of want to make sure I tell everybody that there's going to be a link in the description down here to Miguel's site where you can actually go check out the entire full list. We're just kind of hitting some of the highlighted marks. And there's some names that you probably are like, well, where does this guy land? Well, this guy really deserves to be in there. We get it. There's a lot of names out there, but we don't want to have a 4-hour episode breaking them all down because nobody will watch it.
Yeah.
So there is another name that we see come up a lot, and we're going to touch on it here real quick because he didn't make the list, and it's Parris Campbell out of Ohio State. Where did he actually fall, and why was he not showing up here on the top names?
So Parris Campbell came in the 47th percentile, so he just missed the cut of that top 50th percentile group. However, he didn't participate in one agility drill. I think it was the 20-yard shuttle that no one got a time on him from. If he had participated in that and done well, which based on all his other athletic measurables, it's very safe to assume that he would be an elite athlete in a 20-yard shuttle as well, that he would have scored in the 50th percentile, right at 50. So there is hope for Parris Campbell that he could be in that 50th percentile group that tends to succeed. But he came in just under it as a result of not participating in that event. But someone who I definitely would keep an eye on as part of that elite athleticism group, that if he finds himself in the right situation where he finds himself as the number 1 guy in the depth chart, he could find success like Tyrell Williams a few years ago.
Yep, absolutely. And like I said, there's a lot of other names. I know a lot of people are going to just be looking at the names on the screen and be like, well, where's A.J. Brown? And where's this guy? Where's this guy? Just go check out the article. Like I said, the link is in the description. They're all included in it. We didn't leave them out. Miguel did a great job going through here and researching it and creating this tool for us. And it's definitely something that you should pay attention to. Now, are we saying that, hey, the names we just covered, they're the best wide receivers? No, we took a little bit from each section. We weren't trying to hit every single person. We didn't name just the top names. We wanted to kind of give you guys a range of, where we started at that 50% and where we ended up with the perfect score of Ashton Doolin. Lots of other information in between. So make sure you go check out that article. Like I said, link is in the description. Miguel, I really appreciate you coming on here and explaining this and really appreciate the hard work and stuff you put into creating this.
Yeah, man. Thanks for having me on. Yep. Appreciate you as well.
Absolutely. Well, hey, the NFL draft is right around the corner. As soon as the NFL draft happens, you better believe you're going to see, Miguel's smiling face a lot more, because this is when we can actually start, talking fantasy football possibly with some of these guys, some dynasty stuff, because then we'll have a better idea of what offense they're in, the draft capital, landing spot, all that kind of stuff comes into play here in just a few weeks. So make sure you check out those videos. We greatly appreciate the support. Before we get out of here, make sure you head over to our website, TheFantasyHeadliners.com. Also, the draft guide is available for pre-order, $19.99, full of information. Really excited to release that for you guys, and we are looking forward to it. Have a great rest of your week. We'll talk to you later. Thanks.